Hey there, Mr. Terry, high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher X video. All right, a couple days ago, you guys really liked the video I covered that they did about the Blitzkrieg. And I thought we'd continue the flow, so I went to their channel and was looking up their popular videos. And amongst their top couple was this one. It is Evolution of the Tanks. By the way, historical March Madness for 2025 has begun. If you're watching this on the day or very close to the days when this came out, we are in historical March Madness. We'll be doing that through the rest of March here in 2025. I'll go ahead and put a link down below where you can see the voting. Make sure you're paying attention to that because you'll see when the new voting rounds, about every 3-4 days, we do a new round. This year's theme is famous monarchs. Just pick the monarch that you think should advance in the head-to-head matchups. All right, this original video is down below. Please check it out. All right, I know a lot of you are tank folks, so help me out with some of these. I know the basic stuff, but let me know what you think about how they're going to depict it. That last video I saw on the Blitzkrieg is one of the first ones I've seen from them, and I described their style as like, I don't know, like cute, but also like could be morbid at times. All right, let's see what they got for tanks. So we're going to start with like the Mark 1 or... Hope we start with some World War I here, unless some early... Oh, okay. We're going to go some Da Vinci hypothetical tanks. That would be cool. So they didn't have cannons on them.
Throughout history, men have designed armored vehicles to be used against their enemies on the battlefield.
Okay.
While the first vehicles with the name tank have their roots going back to the World War I, the idea and the concept of the tank goes back all the way to the Middle Ages, where carriages were converted to serve as breakthrough weapons or to transport valuable goods.
By the way, you know one that's really cool from the old days? Medieval Korea. Korea had these like war wagons where it was pulled by horses, but like archers would shoot out of them. They're really cool. Also really fun to play with in Age of Empires.
Some of these carriages would be classed as siege units instead of tanks. That's because of the elements that makes a tank, like its propulsion and firepower, were not yet sufficient in those days.
Like some of those, like, you know, armored, especially on the top, like battering rams from medieval siege warfare, that's kind of like a tank. I mean, people are pushing it, but they're, you know, covered, and then you try to break down, you know, the castle wall or something.
Believe it or not, a V12 twin-turbo diesel engine generating 1,500 horsepower was not a thing yet in the 1500s. For example, this carriage would have had a combined horsepower supply of 1. Sad times. Many different designs were transformed into weird-looking shapes, including a design from Leonardo da Vinci, resembling more of a movable teepee tent than an actual tank.
Yeah, so they have drawings of this. That's how we know about it, because, you know, Da Vinci sketched everything. But yeah, it looked like a modern tank, even though the actual design of it actually didn't make a lot of sense. It basically would have just like spun like that. I don't know if they don't know if he did that on purpose or was like trying to throw off his enemies or something, but he also did a lot of very impractical designs for warfare, like a crossbow that's like the size of a bus, and he liked to dream big.
With a dozen cannons covering all sides, this was less of a tank, more so a movie set piece for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Also had one that had like blades sticking out of the outside of it with Da Vinci, and that one, I mean, I guess you could I think the idea was like slice down cavalry.
Though an effective reloadable cannon was also not yet invented, with armies mostly using dismountable cannons to be used as artillery. Fast forward a few hundred years, and messing around with horses and shitty wooden cars, the first serious design of something resembling a tank came in the year 1915. A British Army colonel named Ernest Swinton and William Hankey championed the idea of an armoured vehicle, with conveyor belt-like tracks over its wheels that break through enemy lines and traverse difficult territory.
Regular just wheels wouldn't have worked, especially on the Western Front, very well, because one of the big problems was it was very muddy. And also they needed the big long tracks that could go over trenches as well. It's why you're going to get the funny looking design I'm sure they're going to show here. But that's simply all it was meant to do, was just get through no man's land. They were big, they were slow, they would break down, couldn't really use them very well, and a lot of offensive maneuvers. You know, of course, it depends on where, you know, part of the front and what the conditions are like. But of course, we know, you know, tanks are really, really going to transform come World War II time. But it's an introduction. It's 1915.
Keep the project secret from enemies, production workers were reportedly told the vehicles they were building would be used to carry water on the battlefield.
Yeah,
so the shipment containers were labeled with the name tank.
Like a water tank.
It's getting a bit obvious now where the name tank came from. You're welcome.
Yeah, I
The
forgot
first
about
tank
that.
prototype was getting the name Little Willie.
With Wilhelm. Could name it after that, like your enemy you're going after. That's funny. You know, with it being secret though, imagine how like freaky that probably was when you were the enemy for the Germans, and all of a sudden you see this big behemoth thing. You're like, what the is that?
Yes, a very well-suited name that just shouts out fear, chaos, and destruction. Little Willie was
Little
slow,
Wilhelm.
broke down easily, and was banned in crossing trenches, which was a pretty fundamental issue in World War
Next
I.
one's going to be better though.
By 1916, Little Willie was followed by Big Willie,
Yeah.
which had similar issues.
So yeah, but look though, watch this.
By 1916, Little Willie
Okay, you see how the tracks though? You see how they're angled like that? Way better for going over the trenches though. Remember, trenches were not very deep as far as like front to back, because you didn't want them to be. You didn't want there to be a big area for artillery to land in and, you know, blow you up.
was followed by Big Willie, which had similar issues. Nevertheless, people saw its potential, so further improvements were made on the design of the Big Willie Mark I. This resulted in the first successful large-scale tank maneuver during the war, with 400 tanks capturing 8,000 German troops and more than 100 field guns.
Get the flamethrower
With this successful
ones.
win, the story of the arms race had begun, with Germany developing a new tank model to counter these threats.
Right.
The
Yeah, the German one wasn't very good though.
German A7V Sturmpanzerwagen, yes indeed a better name than Little Willie, emerged on the battlefield. Although the vehicle had a better performance record, the Germans failed in getting a high production number that would make a significant difference on the battlefield. A problem the Germans wouldn't really learn from all the way to the end of World War II. Nicht klug. During World War I and after, many weird tank designs followed.
Well, look
the
at this
Russian
guy.
Tsar tank basically a giant reversed wheelchair, which
I haven't seen this one before.
Not to spot by enemy units.
Okay, so like the other ones at least are intimidating when you look at it, but like if you saw this, it's like the tank version of those bicycles that have the giant front wheel and then the tiny back wheel.
Also,
Like,
the
you can't
enormous
look tough
wheels
on
would have
it.
made it very difficult to shoot any of the guns on targets in front of you. You know, that place where the enemy is.
Yeah, the wheels are in the way.
The 1917 American-built track layer Bester wasn't a beauty either. A toppled-over rowing boat with a turret was another weird, faulty.
The American ones were a little bit lighter and a little bit quicker. You know, Patton was one that really saw the potential in tanks as well. But yeah, they were more like light and maneuverable.
Design. The vehicle was only used for training maneuvers, and its legacy was short-lived, with the vehicle ending up being used to lead parades, being covered with posters, probably displaying the text, "How not to build your tank."
Yeah.
With the outbreak of World War II, the most
Now they're
prominent
big time,
tank-producing nations being the UK, Russia, Italy, Japan,
Panzers.
Germany, and the US, joining later in the war, all had very different approaches on their tank designs. The Italian and Japanese tanks were among the worst of the bunch.
Italian tanks. Lol.
If you don't agree, yes, you can leave a comment down below. And no, we will of course not read it. Especially during the closing stages of the war. Japanese and Italian under-armored and undergunned tanks stood no chance to the overwhelming numbers of Allied tanks. The Germans did a better job engineering their tanks, but as mentioned earlier in this video,
They were very
had
good at
problems
those.
over-engineering their tanks and could not keep up with the mass production. Simpler tanks
So like too much technology didn't lend itself to mass producing enough. Very interesting thought. I mean, these are all things you have to take into account, right?
Tanks like the M4 engineering their
M4
tanks and could not keep up with the mass production. Simpler tanks like the M4 Sherman and the Russian T-34 tank. Tank
T-34.
producing capability
Do y'all see that movie T-34? It's so funny. It's, you know, it's a tank movie. It's a Russian one, and it's so funny because first you get to see like the World War II perspective from the Russians, but it's like these tank battles and they're like Tokyo drifting 1v1. It's actually kind of funny.
of the US and USSR proved that the Second World War was a numbers game. As long as you were the one capable of easily replacing your losses, your win would be
And
guaranteed.
by the end of the war, US could do that better than
Match
Germany.
fixing to the max. The US-produced M4 Sherman tank was one of the most successful designs of World War II, with many different variants being produced.
They're so cute looking.
The tank was fast, easy to drive, easy to maintain, and was easy to replace if the tank was destroyed.
So that stuff's so
Although
important.
That last one probably did not comfort the crews a lot. No shame.
Well, yeah.
The USSR designed the old
By the way, if you're into tank stuff too, I've also been covering, of course, like the Fat Electrician, if you know him. He does a lot of like, machine of war. And there's a few videos I checked out, and it was really cool to learn about some tanks, and also like bad tanks, like other bad ones. And they're all such interesting stories. But yeah, check that out.
Ultimate tank of the war, the T-34, and later the T-34-85, hit a staggering production total of more than 84,000 units, which is a lot. You can make your tank as fancy in design as you want. If you encounter 84,000 enemy tanks, you can probably Barbaros all the way back to where you came from, humiliation style. This does not mean the Russians did not have their fair share of stupid designs.
Well, yeah, the Russians also got a lot from the United States as well when it came to, tanks and stuff like this from Lend-Lease Act. But yeah, they're going to get their own. But yeah, a lot of materials imported as well. So they were allies, right?
One weird Russian invention, the Antonov A-40, was basically a set of wings with a strap-on tank to pilot the whole thing.
No way that worked. The weight of a tank with wings?
A-40 was basically a set of wings with a strap-on tank to pilot the whole thing. In order to keep it flying, it had to be stripped of all its ammunition, so you ended up with a tank with no ammo. Great idea. World War II had
I never heard of that one.
With some being very successful.
Okay. Someone tell, and I guess I could text him or something, but yeah, Fat Electrician, I need a video on this. I need a video on this thing. This is hilarious.
Great idea. World War II had more weird tank designs, with some being very successful and others being
like surface to air.
The British converted many tanks to be used for the D-Day landings, naming them Hobart's Funnies. You had an amphibious Sherman DD swimming tank. You had the Crab Sherman, used to bitch slap mines into the air. You had the crocodile
and barbed wire
tank. You had the Crab Sherman, used to bitch slap mines into the air. You had the Crocodile Churchill to flamcook the Germans out of their bunkers. Another Churchill variant had a 20-kilogram mortar attached to the turret.
Have you seen the flamethrower tanks? That they would use those at like Okinawa, Iwo Jima, go into those like islands and stuff where there's so many like caves and foliage, jungle and stuff that you can hide in, and rather than send somebody in there if you didn't have to because it could be deadly, just torch it, and they would do that sometimes.
Again, something unpleasant to be on the receiving end of. The Germans also had their special tank designs, with most of them being far more impractical, mostly because of Hitler's over-the-top mindset. An example of this was the development of the Maus tank, a gigantic heavy tank weighing 188 tons and using 16 to 17 liters of fuel for just 1 kilometer.
See, now this makes sense though when you're talking about they're so obsessed with the technology, but then it's like, okay, but can you actually manufacture them at a rate? Like they had all these great designs. Everybody can do that. You can make all kinds of crazy designs, but are they practical? Are they economical? At some point you got to meet that optimism that you have, but then you got to be in reality too.
Luckily for the Germans, they had plenty of fuel to go around by the end of the war.
Nope.
That was a joke. They did not.
Nope.
And so the Maus tank never
go
saw
after
any
Stalingrad
action and were found mostly blown up by the Germans themselves.
Lose to get oil.
If you think the Maus was over the top, say hi to this absolute monster.
Yeah.
The Landkreuzer P1000, the latter. Basically a battleship.
Oh no, it's going to squish the milk.
Another crazy drug-tripping Hitler fantasy with basically no tactical or military value whatsoever.
That's what I'm saying. You just make it because you can. Like this thing might as well just not have wheels and just park it on a hill. It could just, it's like a movable like machine gun bunker artillery nest.
The P1000 latter was designed to house naval guns on a giant armored chassis.
I can appreciate the ambition.
The project was quickly terminated when they found out the P1000 latter would be too big of a target to enemy air units, which sounds also like a too big of an understatement to me. During the last phases of the war, the US introduced the Pershing tank, and after the war, the US further developed tanks. The most numerous were the Patton tanks, after which followed the Sheridan tank, many other models, and eventually the tank that is still in use today, the M1 Abrams heavy tanks.
Abrams still like the GOAT.
Gulf War. The war in
Gulf War.
The M1 Abrams heavy tanks. They have served in the Gulf War, the war in Afghanistan, the Iraq War,
in the Gulf War,
2011 Egyptian Revolution, and multiple other theaters of war.
Yeah.
The Russians kept producing new T variants,
including
the
kept doing the
T-54
Ts.
and later the T-72, followed by the T-90.
They tried to also, keep using those on their proxy wars and stuff. They tried to keep their World War II tanks like in shape and started to like keep using a lot of them, which wasn't a great idea always. But, you use what you have, right?
Which are doing great in Ukraine right now.
No.
T-72, followed by the T-90, which are doing great in Ukraine right now.
They were losing so many, they had to go back and like dig up the World War II tanks and try to make them functional. That was something they actually were having to do.
A tank that might perform better in Ukraine could be the T-14 Armata, but for some reason the Russian government has not produced significant numbers of the T-14 yet. Basically, why would you want to send capable tanks to Ukraine anyway? Their tactic is to let their tanks be blown up, so their flying cupolas become additional artillery to pummel the enemy. Very clever. Maybe in the near future we will see how the German Leopard tanks will...
Yeah, who's I covering about that? Was it a Laser Pig video? I think he was talking about those tanks. And yeah, they're the tank issue that Russia's having.
Or their latest, very clever. Maybe in the near future we will see how the German Leopard tanks will perform, or their latest 2022 Panther tanks. By the way, interesting name for a new tank, considering the Germans are always so itchy with everything relating to their past. And yet, they can now just copy-paste Nazi tank names straight from World War II like it's a fucking Call of Duty game. For now, it looks like Ukraine will become more and more the world's largest testing ground for new weapon systems, both for Russia and the West. It might tell us more if the role of the tank will remain significant in the future.
I think this video is about a year old, so FYI, meaning 2003 or 4. I don't. They say a year, but it could be like a year and 9 months, a year and 2 months. I don't remember the exact release date, but right now you're watching this. It's 2025. If you're watching right now,
or will it become completely obsolete? Time will tell. Check out our new store for cool Mitsi merch, or join our Patreon community.
Buy little ones?
Every month we publish new and exclusive content.
I want a little tank.
Check out our Patreon and become a member today.
Final thoughts. All right, fun little educational video there on tanks. That could totally show that in school. I'm trying to remember now, looking back, because sometimes they have some language in it. I can't remember if they did in this one. I guess I've just become numb to that. That's something I have to make sure I pay attention to, because you can't have the bad language stuff, in classes. So anyways, that was cool. There was a few tanks there I hadn't heard of, like the one that had the wings. That one was wild. Yeah, we need to get our friend Fat Electrician to do a whole video on that. So anyway, all right. If you guys are liking the Mitsi Studio stuff, let me know which videos you want me to see. Best place to get those to my attention is on our Discord server. If you're not a Discord member, why don't you join our community? We have a nice big active one. Loves to talk history and other stuff. Link to join is down below, and you'll see a video suggestions channel. That is by far the best way to get a video to my attention. All right, with that, we'll see you next time. Bye.